Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Jeff. How you doing? Hey, check this out. I already did this once, and the sound sucked, so I put in some headphones. I'm gonna try it now. I did a test. It sounded good, so gotta share this with my relatively small group of friends. That one was she. Oh, shoobity doop, bop, boo, 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 ba, ba, da, ba, da, bum. Still reading. I'm still reading. Yo, Jefe's still reading chapters from his book. Hey, you know who's Jefe? That's me. I'm that guy. All right. I gotta reread this big old long chapter. Book 3, The Frontier Star, Chapter 1. Portillion, we'll meet you in cargo. Captain Thraxus switched off the intercom, looking around at the crew. Faline was loaded for bear. If Joran's count was correct, she had 7 different ways she could kill you, not counting hand to hand. Just a sec. Not counting hand to hand. Sophris was drawn and calm as usual. Joran found himself both annoyed and intrigued by the man. To think what incredible things he could do to you if he wanted to. Gods bless the makers for giving the Mistral a conscience. He'd seen what one could do without it. Grundle was on the mend. It had only been 2 days since the necrotic, 3 since the bombing, but thanks to his incredible Voraki constitution and Aeana's healing powers, he was returning to some level of health. Ramsdale was sick, angry, sullen. He'd lost sight in his right eye and could barely see through the other. He was near useless in the engine room and would be until he'd learned to adapt to his new audio centric life. He didn't come right out and say it, but Joran could tell he blamed the heroes for his fate, as if they could have contained the necromancer somehow. Hell, if it hadn't been for Grundle, they'd still be scrubbing him off the kitchen floor. I just realized that doesn't really make sense. If Grundle hadn't beaten the thing, he would have killed everyone and used their bodies. So I don't know. Forget it. Fuck. Fucking plot holes or whatever you call that. Continuity errors. I don't know. Whatever. We'll fix it in post. Aeana was a problem. Joran had gone and fallen in lust with her, and she was clearly aware. Thankfully, she'd exercised restraint. At this point in his life, he wasn't sure what he would do if he thought a woman like her might be into him. Probably he'd make a move and then feel like a disgusting old man afterwards. He'd more or less given up sex since Natalie died. He just couldn't seem to keep his heart out of it. There's nothing sadder than an old man falling in love with a young woman. He knew. He'd gone down that road a couple times over the years. Whenever their paths crossed, she smiled at him and he smiled back. If only there was some way one could deactivate one's genitals, life would be so much easier. They'd made their way through various security checks and landed on Thermopylae. Hold on a minute. Well, I hope I read demons last week, or else this won't make any sense. Pretty sure I read demons last week. Sorry, that's a long way down in here to get freaked out about it. Let's see. Portillion had said the rendezvous would be a peaceful one, but Joran had serious doubts. Joran gave Numerius a look that said, "When I call, you better goddamn bring the cavalry." Numerius nodded. They were in agreement. Portillion! The captain raised his hand as the crew left the elevator. Portillion smiled and waved. He was standing next to a stack of cargo covered with a canvas tarp. As the crew neared, Portillion withdrew an intricately filigreed metal box, roughly the size of a small umbrella. He drew a skinny object from the box, a wand, and motioned it towards the cargo. The tarp elevated, then swooshed down and folded itself neatly beside the stack of boxes. The captain gripped his belt buckle, marveling at the scene. It's the wand, then. Portillion looked down at the wand and smiled. No, Captain, this is nothing. He aimed it at the boxes. The surface of the boxes melted away, the panels seeming to disappear and then reappear, neatly stacked halfway across the chamber. In their place stood a squat, roughly humanoid form, wrapped in blankets and an ancient looking rope. The rope began to unravel. The blankets, the head was a bit too large, like a mistral, the teeth a bit too pointy, like a ifrit, the fingers a little too slender, like a lunari, the eyes heavy lidded, like a gillamorian. In places, the skin was stretched tight across thick stone ridges, like a vorak, and the hair glittered like diamonds, just like a zentrite. Ayanna broke down immediately. She fell to her knees, overcome with guilt and shame, as if the goddess herself was ashamed of herself and taking it out on Ayanna. What is happening to me? She wondered aloud. Grundle knew instantly. He'd seen the statues on his home world, the people before, the original makers. But were they really that small? Joran felt the fear, but remained calm. It's a statue. What's the significance? Everyone looked at Joran as if stunned by his lack of affect. They were all looking at this thing like it was a god, but it wasn't. What's the big deal? Portillion kept his eyes shut, as if communing with an unseen spirit. Mr. Barlow, this is the last known repository of pre-division human remains. Holy shit! Joran stumbled backwards. His logical mind said, this was what they looked like? It's not even 5 feet tall. He felt himself double over and come down on one knee. He was retching for some reason. I don't remember eating rice this morning. The crew just stood there, completely thrown. Ramsdell leaned on his cane and stared as if his blinded eyes could see it plainly. Of all of them, he was the closest in height to it, which put him at eye level. Its expression seemed cruel somehow, as if it blamed all of them for its fate. Ayanna held up a hand. Is it haunted? Portillion opened his eyes and smiled. No, of course not. The ancients are gone. All that's left inside are presumably a few pounds of ash. The thing itself is not the power. It's what it could mean for science, for a deeper understanding of our species and our worlds. There are a great many forces who would like to keep such things hidden from our sight. No doubt the necrotic was sent by such a one. The captain strode towards it, visibly shaken, but doing his best to project an air of bravado. So now we know what it is. The question is, what are you going to do with it? Portillion smiled again. We will be delivering it to the agents of the Brotherhood of Light for protection and study. Aeona sighed. Of course. The Brothers of Light. Sensible. Their monasteries are secluded, well fortified. They are sworn against any political machinations, forbidden to lie. It wouldn't be the first dangerous artifact to make its way into their protection. And you're certain these agents can be trusted? Sophris was calm, but his question was pointed. Portillion waved the wand again, restoring the blankets, ropes, panels, and tarps back into position. The Brothers of Light have always served with honor. They remove themselves from the rest of us in order to ensure the safety of the galaxy. You would be hard pressed to find anyone willing to double cross them. The damage to one's reputation would be bad enough, not to mention the physical price of such a betrayal. Aeona heard the unspoken words. Double cross the brothers, and bad things will befall you. A great many families owed favors to the brothers. If they gave the word, said families could make life very difficult for the offending party. What do you need from us, Portillion? Aeona asked. Jorn smiled, admiring Aeona's ability to get to the point. Portillion slid the wand back into its case and disappeared it into the folds of his robe. Security. Whoever sent the necrotic has likely received word that we'll be unloading the object. We'll need to transfer it in such a way that will not arouse suspicion. The captain spoke. Have you some plan worked out with the brothers? Portillion nodded. I do. He proceeded to outline the operation and work with the team to fine tune it. By the end of the planning session, they were all fairly confident that it would succeed. All except Joran, of course. He never expected a win. Life was a lot easier to deal with when you didn't entertain notions of victory. Though sometimes he projected an image of confidence to keep his colleagues from getting discouraged. Aeona gave him a look that said, You good with this? He flashed her a smile, then patted his trusty handgun. Message sent, message received. Ah, y'all, I love this book. All I want to do is talk about it. I know it's crazy. It's bananas. Probably shouldn't say crazy all the time, even though I'm kind of crazy. Bipolar too. And I smoke out of weed. Yeah. All right. Chapter Chapter 2. Faking the handoff. Think about that while Just think about that while I'm lighting this bong. Well, first I gotta load it, and then I gotta light it, and then I gotta puff on it, suck all in the smoke. Not a great song. This one's called Plushberry from Suspended Cannabis Co. I bet the person that runs this label uh was uh was suspended from school once and they still have a bit of a chip on their shoulder about it. So that's why they named their weed place Suspended. I wonder why they called this one Plushberry. Maybe they had plush bears when they were a kid. I'm just on this shit now. What's going on in the mind of the weed marketer? Do you just troll Netflix looking for words that fit the demographic you're selling to? Ah! You guys put up with so much. All right. Faking the handoff. This is literally the dumbest thing we could be doing. Ayana looked over at Joran, both of them dressed in full tourist regalia, their whole vibe screaming of outworld intrigue. The three workmen they'd hired to pull the cargo were lugging carts full of boxes wrapped with blankets and canvas tarps. The others would move in two teams, doing essentially the same thing. They'd stay in touch over secure voice link, monitored by Numerius, who'd be staying on the ship. The real statue would go with Portillion, who was using magic to disguise he and Grundle's appearance. Portillion's workmen were actually guns for hire, and the cargo they'd be pulling was the least valuable parcel on the ship, which meant they could abandon it if need be. Grundle would carry the object on his back, made up to look like a rucksack. He looked ridiculous, but Portillion surmised no one would expect someone to carry something so valuable in such a precarious manner. Ayana hoped he was correct. The other team would include the captain, Phaline, Ramsdell, and Sophris. Sophris would act as go-between, using his psychic ability to send uncoded communications in the event of a security breach. The teams would be close enough to each other that, in the event of a serious problem, they could conceivably converge and work together. The captain's team was the real decoy. They had also hired workmen, the shittiest, shadiest ones they could find, and talked openly about the area where they'd be meeting the brothers, an area where the brothers would definitely not be. With luck, the decoy would draw in the thieves, giving Grundle and Portillion an unblocked path to their destination. That destination, of course, was smack in the middle of the largest open air bazaar in the galaxy, Shungdong Square. Portillion and Grundle would travel on side streets until they reached the Tender Bowl, a small restaurant near the winding river. More of a stream than a river, but hey, that's climate change for you. Then they would ditch the workers and go underground to the tunnels of the old city. There was a large underground area there where the black market flourished. There they would meet the agents of the of the Brotherhood of Light and surrender the statue. Then it was smooth sailing back to the Horus and back to their original mission. Ayana and Joran, on the other hand, were basically on an island. There was simply no telling what they might run into. And without the major firepower of their colleagues to help them, they'd be in serious trouble if things went sideways. Well, Joran, this is it. She did a funny gesture with her fist, making a silly face to go along with it. He smiled, nodding. Yep, it's been nice knowing you. They left the yard, workmen in tow, scanning their periphery like a couple of dumb tourists. Joran felt a little humiliated. He'd hate for the boys back home to hear about this rube act. Oh well, detective work, or whatever you call this, was rarely glamorous. Hell, in his last fight, he'd barely gotten a shot off before running for his life. If it hadn't been for Sophris, he'd be sitting in cold storage right now. I should probably thank the guy. Yeah. Right on. I love you, Sophris. You're so cute. You're so cute. I just want to put you in my pocket. All right. Coming up next, the Pit of Souls.